Hi there, Randi Gren here. Let's continue from the previous video, rediscovering the fourth density, and it just kind of shut off because my storage unit, the storage level of my iPad, were used up. Anyways, it was a good place to stop because I will continue to something else that is equally important, and that is what could be called the responsibility rate. Humanity has to elevate their responsibility for their own reality. And that is, sorry about that, that's with a lot of implications for us. Because that is something we are not good at. And I will not victimize us in this. So I will just, as I said, whatever has been, what is. Let's focus on that one. Let's go into solution. And not pointing fingers or sitting like little sulking kids and saying, that's their fault, that is like this. And there are many good reasons why we have issues as we have now. But one of them is part of the responsibility we have to take about our planet and about ourselves. And it's both things have to be addressed. But all changes begin with the one that are supposed to unfold the changes. And the human body and how it is composed and engineered is to be able to manifest a specific type of energy. And that is what this mammal vessel is created for. It manifests energy. It creates energy. It's an energy producer. And right now it's a restricted energy producer, electromagnetic, and the higher dimensional energies are being restricted by a kind of barrier that is between the bio-DNA and the overlay genetics by the strict control of the bio-DNA to only function on frequencies. As our reality is being terraformed around us, which it is already, these restrictions will be lifted and the human body will begin to function on fourth density energies again. And in that, the overlay genetics will begin to bridge in as the fourth density comes back. So will the barrier between the bio-DNA electromagnetically controlled and the genetics, the alien genetics, which are the true genetics of the races of the system. That is not true as in the real, because that's actually human, but the humanoid genetics that have been added into us will, which I'm saying true compared to the bio-DNA, which is an artificial construction. So when these genetics will begin to bridge back in as our fourth density comes back into play, so will our overlay genetics, and they will merge into the bio-DNA, the mammal DNA we are composed of, and in that begin producing energy in a new way. This body has been producing fourth density type of energy already, but without our conscious knowing. And that is something that's, again, part of the hosting, which I will return to. But now I want to focus on our responsibilities, because it's very, very important that you understand what and who you are before we go into the things they have done, which will make you get pretty angry. But you have to understand your side of things first. And when you've taken responsibility for that and have learned to work with that, then we can begin discussing the actions that needs to be taken and the negotiations that need to be taken and the trade that has to be done with these races that are here, the colonizers, and what they have done and what the transgression rate for their actions should be. But it has to be on the right level, and that level is what I'm trying to get you up to. But for now, we are humans here working already, doing this work. So this is when the majority of the 30% that's got the overlay genetics wake up and become the new race on this planet. We will be... my hope is that I will have schooled you enough, and others like me, so that you will be able to trade, negotiate, and work with these races that are here, the humanoid races, as well as still continuing doing your true human evolution and using the principles of this reality as it was supposed to, And from that, eventually, we will be the schoolers and teachers of the humanoid races as it has been supposed to from the very beginning. Because human races are races that have done the humanoid evolution and have moved beyond it, but are often coming back into humanoid systems and teaching the humanoids how to do their own evolution and assisting them in their evolutionary progress. And that was often done by the collaboration with the Syrians and the human races, which are very advanced races. They gave to some of the Syrians in the ancient systems, very ancient, gave them the teachings of how to teach the humanoids, and in that the Syrians became what is called the teachers and the overseers. And that is where they have kind of gone a little bit wrong, because they have not really lived up to their responsibility either. But that is why you got some of the teachings from the Syrians that are spiritual, that are focusing on developing the mammal vessel and the humanoid consciousness and these kind of things, focused on the humanoids that have been part of the projects down here. So when we go into the whole understanding of, is there a human soul? Let's just now say no. Okay, just leave it there. I will in another video. But there is no human soul as you understand it. Okay, so I'm just leaving it there because this is complicated. But here we're talking about the responsibility we have to take, and that's what I want to focus this video on. The responsibility we have to take is to take responsibility for our body. And this is the purification of the body I will talk about in this video. Because there is a purification of your mind and the purification of your emotions. And many of the Syrian teachings, the spiritual ones, has focused on purification of the emotions. These are the old teachings. And only from the 30s and up, or actually with the Bailey material, began the purification and understanding of the mind. Trying to bridge the mind into the dimension thinking or energy. That has worked to some degree, but the problem was that they had to make the teachings kind of obscure and difficult to grasp, and the whole point of these teachings were actually to develop the brain to be able to process dimensional energy. And I'm focused on that task as well, and has been for quite some time, and it's not that easy. So even though you might say that they have done the very best, they have also failed, because the human mind is still running on frequencies and has issues and difficulties in letting go of that. But that's because the controlled narrow band of mind and frequencies that are being used on the brain from the negative factions. So that is also why things have not worked well. They are just advocating a little bit for their innocence there. They know they have failed. Let's just put it that way. We are, these videos, this series of videos, as I said, are not about pointing fingers, because we have all messed up the system, and now we take responsibility. And then when we have taken our share of our responsibility, we can point fingers, and then we can begin arguing who did this and that, whatever, and who has the highest transgression rate. But first, we all need to clean up the mess, because fourth density is here, and it's coming in quickly, and it's coming in this year, and it's going to make a lot of issues in 18 on different levels. And as I said, I am not for the fear-mongering, catastrophic agenda, so I will focus on working with different solutions where, from my perspective, we can still do a lot of good things, and we will do so. So the purification of the body. This is one of the biggest issues on this planet, because we have contaminated our body, we have contaminated our ground, and we have contaminated the racial grid. And we have contaminated it by the blood of the many. The killing rate on this planet is so high that it exceeds all wars in all systems. Humans on this planet are killing animals and each other to such a degree that the transgression rate for that alone if the natural energies and principle of this system were to kick in from one day to another, or you activate it into your full capacity from one day to another, still eating meat, that you would dissolve and evaporate into dust in an instant. So we have a huge problem there, people. You cannot in any ways or forms eat meat. No fish, no poultry, no shrimps, no meat whatsoever. Nothing that has been killed must pass these lips. You cannot even eat things that have been cooked in the same pot as meat, or beside meat, or later is added meat, because it's energy. We're talking about energy here. Meat is first and foremost deteriorating energy. It is a killed animal, and the animal is killed in stress and in pain and in suffering. When you eat the meat from a killed animal in stress, pain and suffering, that is what you eat. You eat stress, pain and suffering. I have to be very, very strict on this one. And when you do that, you participate in the energy of the kill, and you code your entire physical form to express that energy. That leads to distortion energies of your bio-DNA to such a rate that the body begins to deteriorate itself. It literally becomes the death it eats. Okay? So that's very, very important. Some of the warring mantids, I'm not happy that they are in my field, but they are, because beginning of this month I challenged the Orion Council. Yeah, that's what I do. So we are, sorry about that, we are working a little bit about solving some of the issues, doing trade, and this is one of the trade things. Yeah, let's just go there. They're giving me pieces of information, and I'm trading to advocate information, which I'm doing. Again, I'm selecting my words here. It's very important. These races are very, very strict on the correct types of words, because all words have a specific type of energy. So we have a problem with the killing of the many and the blood of the many on this planet. Plus, we have all of the casualties of the wars that are going on, contaminating the soil, contaminating the grid, and contaminating the racial memories. When you have a killing on a place, you contaminate that place energetically. You contaminated the ones that had observed the killing. By going in this, the energy goes just totally, sorry, I have to control that one, because I was thinking about the terror in London, and then my energies just go, because then I participate in that. So just give me 2 seconds, because there's so much high fear and pain and suffering rate in that one, in the collective consciousness of humans and the ones that observe this. That's part of what is going on in England right now. And that is all about lowering the energies. And that has to do with the agenda in America and what is going to unfold from there, which we saw in the Second World War. Okay? So these are some of the very old Nazi lineages that are trying to get back into play, and we will not give them this opportunity. So just give me 2 seconds. I have to shut this down. That's a good example. You go in and control your heart rate. You feel your heart. You feel the energy in your heart of what is going. You literally let your emotions there tell you, okay, what's going on here. So this is where it's difficult information to convey, because I have to convey it in a way so you don't get negative, you don't get aggressive, and you don't get emotionally touched by what I'm saying here. So what I'm saying here, control your mind. You don't think about the kill, you just take it as a concept. But it has to be conveyed. But when I do this to you, you will automatically think the images that are connected to this, and you're not supposed to do so. You've been fed with all of these images on the internet to make you generate a specific type of frequency in your brain that makes your nervous system go into a specific frequency, and that, along with the eating of the meat, allows for specific races of the Orions to attach to your body from the fourth dimension. So that was the highest level of the understanding of why not to eat meat. The problem with humanity of today is that we feed our children meat. And that means that even though we become vegetarians or vegans later on in life, we still carry that energy in our guts. So one of the things that we will have to learn to administer is the energies of the body, and how to cleanse out these residual energies of when we did things we didn't know about. And we could advocate for a lower transgression rate because we were as kids innocent in being fed the meat. But the point is that most kids are actually quite content with the meat because their brain has been engineered to prefer that as a kind of feed or food. So in that cannot be held in the councils. The councils are the ones that do the transgression rate. And right now these councils are under the humanoids. And not until we get the energy high enough can we begin calling in the human councils. So those of us who are here advocating for the human councils, we are trying to trade and negotiate these transgression rates on the behalf of humanity, pleading the not knowing or the state of the innocent. So that is the first step that you need to work with your bodies, that you turn it into the state of innocence. And you already heard that in some of the very ancient Syrian teachings, which were actually a kind of combination of Pleiadian and Syrian. And that is only the ones that turn back to the state of the child will enter into the kingdom, which is the real reality. Okay, you already heard it. So that means you have to change your body into a state of innocence. And that means that it cannot have the usual lust. It cannot, you have already heard it, the 10 Commandments. None of this. You can't lie, you can't cheat, you can't fornicate like you want to do, you can't be perverted, you cannot kill, you cannot trash the higher principles of this reality. Yeah, I can't remember the 10 Commandments, but you already heard them, and humans today are not living up to them. You could say if in Denmark, where we have a very high civilization, so to speak, where we help each other and we pay enormous amounts of money in tax, so that we can support the weak and the ones that can't support themselves, and we have education that are paid for and these kind of things. These are seen as more educated and higher rated societies, and that is a good place to begin, but it doesn't change the mindset of the common Danish person and the movies he or she is moving and the things they indulge in, the war games they play on their iPad, the extreme movies they like to see, whatever that means, affecting their energy system. We are not killing out there, but we are indulging in movies with a lot of kill and a lot of perversion. So humans today are still participating in it by their leisure activities. Okay? So that's where we go into the control of the mind and control of the emotions. So there are no permission slips when we talk about transgression rate, because it's all about administering energy. And before we point fingers of the ones that have been used humanity for their own purposes, we have to look into what we are actually doing on our own. So let's begin with ourselves first. Look in the mirror and look at ourselves first and ensure that we are impeccable. We cannot go out and claim a judgment for other races until we ourselves are impeccable. Okay? That's a very important rule. You cannot conquest or conquer or petition or go into war with any race, which always begins with kind of looking at who the pros and the cons and the state of who he or she is. It's kind of the wars of the alien races are kind of a little bit of a complicated thing because there's a lot of preparation going on there. And the preparation is that you literally begin looking up the transgression rate, and in that choose your finest warriors, all depending on what kind of issue you want to war on. And in the beginning of this month, I challenged the Orion Council on warring on the lowest transgression rate. And that's why I'm giving you this information. And I did that deliberately, because I purified myself so much as I possibly can, but I still got issues to clear out. And it's a good place to do these videos because that brings me into the levels of my body I have not cleared out myself, which they are very nicely pointing in my direction as a kind of, yeah, that doesn't work for you. So if you want to play the games on this one, you have to do this and that, whatever. So that's part of the warring. That is literally a contest for the warriors, and I've done this on my own. But I'm doing it on the behalf of my race, which means you. So this is why I'm taking you into this. Okay, this is a little bit of the work I'm doing, and this is where it gets very complicated with these races, because they got some very ancient rule sets, especially if you go into the war pillar. I've been working on the trade pillar for quite some time. And that has not taken me very far with the Orions. It took me quite far with the Syrians. But I need to work with the Orions, and the Orions you can only work with inside the war pillar. So that's what I'm doing, and this is part of that work. So I'm sharing it with you because the information there is good and important for you to get as well. So I am being informed that our race is suffering from such a high level of contamination that even though I might stand purified and justified and resurrected. Yeah, these are some very different terminology, but this is part of the games. These are all part of working with my energy. I have an issue with the contamination level of me and my race. And even though I'm a vegan, has been for many years, I ate meat when I was a kid. And they informed me that that level of energy is still part of the genetic memory of my cells in my bio-DNA in my stomach area. And that stomach area that goes with the stomach sac itself links up to some very old type of brain cells that affects my mind. So by feeding our kids meat, we literally enable their brains to only run on frequencies or not consciousness and dimensional energy. So that's the first thing we need to do, those of us who are doing this work for a race and taking the responsibility, is that we stop eating meat and we don't give our kids meat. We have to stop that no matter how much they scream and yell. We cannot participate in the blood of the many. Because when you eat your meat on a daily basis, and this is where no images. When you eat your meat, you participate. I have to choose my words very, very careful here. They're tricking me to convey this information because this will send a shock wave. So I'm just, I can't say it, but those of you who are quick, quiet, and brilliant enough, you will know what I'm saying here. It goes with all forms of kill. Okay? So, no meat. And then when we have cleansed ourselves and we have worked with the energies of our stomach and we have cleaned them out, and you begin, of course, doing the normal kind of, you become vegan or vegetarian, primarily vegan, please just vegan, because when you eat things, the milk products and the eggs, you're still eating animal participating in the animal, and that kind of, it's not the kill, but it makes your animal kind of like. So, and animals are mammals like you, so it would be the same as taking fluids from another human and produce something out of it. Let me just put it that way. Make sense? Okay, so stop. The milk products have to go as well. But that leads to other issues. But now we have to remember that this is just for 30% of the human population, because the other 70 do not have these dimensional issues. So this is for those are for the ones of us who have been re-engineered and hybridized. There are rules for us, and this is one of them. Okay, so vegan. Change your diet, cleanse out your organs, your system, and you don't have to do fast, but you can if you like. The most important thing is to learn to work with the energies of your body. And the energies of your body is not just only ruled by what you eat, it's also ruled by what you think and what you feel. And that will be for the next video. But you can learn to self-heal yourself. And when you self-heal, you are able to work with the cells and the information in the cells. And that is energy. You literally learn to look at your cells and work with them. And that demands a little bit of expanded awareness, because when you use your hands, you put it on your stomach, for instance, you have to kind of envision all of the cells that your stomach is created of, the anatomy of the stomach, and how it's composed. You have to be able to sense the cellular tissue of the stomach, and literally in that work with the tissue itself as if you were caressing your skin, and feel it, and in that begin clearing out, going from that with your consciousness, going into the cells, and from that learn to work with the correct vibration that is called cellular memory. And that is not that easy. So this is why it's easily given information, but it's not that easy to perform. But of course you can just place your hands there and begin with the intention, because all work with energy begins with intention. So if you have the intention of clearing out the cellular memories of your stomach, after you've changed change your diet, and you have to have become a vegan and have cleansed out your body for at least a month by eating purified food, then you can begin thinking about balancing and resetting the cells of the stomach. And that intention is very important, the resetting of the cells to their natural state. That's the intention, resetting your cells to the natural state. And that natural state is the natural state of the engineered vessel you're part of, how it was supposed to function. That is what we go for now, the bio-DNA. Reinstate it into its natural composition, how it was supposed to work from the very beginning. And the very first mammals under the Sirians and Pleiadians were not meat eaters. So that would be the natural state. And the information I've given you here, you cleanse out your brain as well, not thinking about the negative things I just said here. I am allowed to give you information, and you should be able to receive information, but don't go deep into it. Don't give it more energy. Just understand that this is the dynamics, the mechanics of eating meat, not something you need to indulge in, or to wallow in and participate more in by thinking about it. You just take it in, then you understand it, and then you make a decision and you change what you eat. You do it by will. You just do it, because you have got enough information here. I could also just give you the normal logical ones. Just think about how much slaughtering there has to be on a daily basis to give that much meat that humans on this planet are consuming. And we're almost 8 billion people. Okay? So Let's just leave it with that one. But the problem is that the blood of the many goes further back. It goes back a very, very long time back. It actually goes all the way back to the ancient races that came under the influence of the negative aliens a long time ago, because they've been here for quite some time as well, teaching them how to slit the throat of the animal and let the blood into the ground as a sacred action. So that contaminated the soil. All the blood that is spilled on the ground is soaked into the soil and contaminating it. And the racial grid is being contaminated by our physical forms, because this engineered form is tapping into the planetary grid to be able to exist here. So that's the first responsibility you take. That is that you take responsibility for the purification of your physical form. So all of your cells stand in a golden vibration of the highest possible natural setting for it, by what you eat and what you drink and what you consume. And consume goes into what you see and watch of movies, what you see and watch of things of leisure activities, how you administer your sexual energy, what you indulge in as of perversions. And most of the normal human things which you think is kind of okay are perversions. So, and you heard this, you know this. When I say it, most of you know it. You know exactly what I'm talking about. When I say this, it pops up in your head. You know, I know I could do that better. You do it today, okay? We're trying very hard to make this race an honorable one, so please participate in it. Take your responsibility of doing so. Okay, in terms of alcohol, that's a no-go. It creates a specific type of energy that literally shuts off your brain. And in shutting it off, you open up to a lot of distortion energies that are then free to come in and take over your vessel while you're being drunk. The use of drugs is a total no-go too. Goes with the same explanation, and I could give a lot of good explanation why drugs are not okay. Ayahuasca, marijuana, cannabis, pot, oil, cannabis oil, any form of mind, brain, gland altering substances, mushrooms, DMT, whatever's out there, no go. That is an open invitation into levels of other planes of existence you do not want to participate in. DMT and ayahuasca alters your pituitary gland, your pineal gland. DMT and ayahuasca alters your pineal gland into a function that enables it to link up to some code streams you do not want to participate in. You have to work with your pineal gland and give it golden energy and transform it into its original natural mammal state for this vessel. When you work with cannabis and pot and marijuana, you change your pituitary gland. You can say the pineal gland is kind of what links you to the third cycle, very old, dark type of energy. And here I'm not talking about dark as evil, but it's these races that are back then are not something we want to participate in anymore. That's history. We have to shut that door down. When we talk about the pituitary, we go into the fourth cycle type of energy, and that is being altered into the distortion versions by the use of cannabis, marijuana, pot, cannabis oil, whatever. It alters the function of the pituitary gland. And for me, there is no discussion. I will, no matter what people say, the good benefits of it in all sorts of seizures or in cancers and whatever, when you use that, you alters the function of your pituitary gland and it sets you into the fourth cycle. The fourth cycle energies are not that bad as the third, but if we are to rise this humanity into its natural state and the natural function of the mammal vessel, the pituitary has to work in its correct way, and it cannot work correctly when you're using these substances. It unfortunately also goes with add-on on skins, but you have to discern how huge, large amounts you're using. But daily smoking or intaking or whatever of these substances are definitely altering the pituitary gland, and it lowers its energy, so it cannot vibrate up into its golden natural function for the mammal vessel. When the pituitary does not work correctly, it affects your sight, it affects your thyroid, it affects your heart. And it also affects your stomach and your liver and spleen and the organs, because the pituitary is kind of the main gland for all of the lower level glands and the functions of the metabolism in the body and how it processes energy. So when you do cannabis and all these kind of things, it dims down and distorts and ruins the natural function of the pituitary gland. And that is actually a very high-leveled type of fourth into sixth dimensional type of energy that can process. The pineal gland can process dimensional energy from the third to the seventh. But that goes again with the third cycle, and we have to be very careful with the pineal gland. It is only to be activated when the pituitary works correctly and has linked up correctly to the thyroid, which goes with some of the energies that we can access in for the fifth dimension, which actually goes with the correct thyroid gland, the function of it. Then these three can work together in a triangle, processing the correct type of energy, which will then affect the other glands of the body to enable the cells in the body to process dimensional energy. So when you think you're using consciously, or what you call it, mind-altering substances entering you into higher consciousness, you're actually doing the total opposite. You're going back in evolution, or you're distorting the natural mammal ability of the pituitary to process some very purified and nice energies of this system, which are part of the Pleiadian genetics. That one goes with some Syrian genetics, but also the Orions, primarily the Orions. So that's why that's in play. The Syrians have worked very hard to engineer the thyroid that can go into the fifth density. So that's kind of their little masterpiece here. So the glands are energy setters. We know the glands work as opening and closing of the cells. They are affecting the receptors of the cell, and they are also affecting the mind and your emotions, because your emotions is an electrochemical reaction to what's going on in your glands. So it begins up here, begins with the mind. Okay, so that's a good place to stop and go to the next video. So to keep your stomach area and the very ancient type of cells you got in your body, to keep them as highly energetic as possible and purified as possible and free of the collective issues we have got with the contamination of our planet, you become a vegan. To ensure the highest level of your glands producing electrochemical energy, you do not do any forms of DMT or ayahuasca affecting your pineal gland to connect to the third evolutionary cycle type of energy, which enables the Orion, some of the very bad Orion races, to connect to your energy system. When you work with the understanding that you have to purify your pituitary, and in that ensure that the metabolism in your body works correctly and you're producing the correct type of energy, the purified fourth dimensional energy. You do not use cannabis, marijuana, pot, or any substance whatsoever. You find other solutions to your issues. And in that, meditation is brilliant for that, by the way. You go in because that's a whole other level of information. But if you have issues with your nervous system, you can also do that by changing what you eat and meditation and self-healing. So you don't need these substances. So you clear out your pituitary to become the most natural setting for its natural balanced way of functioning for this mammal vessel, and that is a golden type of energy. When these two work in a golden type of energy, and you do that by intention and by energy work and meditation, you can activate your thyroid to its correct fifth density level. So you've got the third dimension, fourth dimension, fifth dimension. And that is the dimensional triangle that is enabling your brain to begin processing and working with dimensional energy. So the idea of mind-altering substances to open up your consciousness is correct, but you are opening up to the wrong levels of this mammal, and in that abusing the vessel itself, and at the same time linking up to levels of this reality you do not want to be part of. Okay? And I'm saying this from the point of view of enabling humanity to stand resurrected and purified in facing the other races that are here as well. I cannot force you not to do these kind of things. I'm just telling you, everything you do is participating in a type of energy. And you decide, because this is a free will system, you decide what type of energy you want to participate in. And you decide what type of races you want to be part of. The Nagas, the serpent races, have very strong control of the pituitary gland. Okay? And the Syrians, that's their department. So, you've got the Orions, you've got the Arcturians or the Nagas or the avian races with the pituitary, and you've got the reptile races down going on here. Okay? So, insectoid, avian, reptoid. And you decide how your brain is going to work by the substances you use. And I don't advocate for any mind-altering substances. I work for free will, hard work, and daily energy cleansing. That's the way I do it. Okay? And when you drink alcohol in all forms, or even drinks that are based upon yeast, and bread with yeast, by the way, you also alter the very old brain cells in the stomach, lowering the function of the synapses in the brain. Okay? So food to ensure the highest level of energy in your cells, as well as in the very ancient levels of the brain. And then no intake of mind-altering substances whatsoever. And focus on developing that triangle. And you do that in meditation. You don't have to focus on the chakras whatsoever. You can self-heal on the throat. You can self-heal on the pituitary or on the pineal. And you do it all by hands-on and intention. It's all about intention. And you do that by having first learned to work with your heart, creating the correct heart energy, which is the golden white type of energy. And you push that up in mind and in hands, and you literally use it to self-heal these three glands to ensure that your brain works on the best type of energy whatsoever. And I'm not going to give you more than that, because I run classes, and this is of course part of my classes and my teachings, and people are paying for this, so I'm not going to give you more than that. But of course there are extra tricks and ways and in-depth methods to do this. But that is of course people who are taking my classes, and I'm not doing that because I am greedy, but it's a fair exchange of energy that you get knowledge and you help me pay my bills. So I'm just saying this. So this is the physical level. Purification at the physical level goes with this.